The thing with a story is, when you're reading a story is actually a little bit easier, unless it's, like something that is really like a detective story, a certain point where you've really got to figure out something. You've got to sit and think. That makes it a bit more sort of, where you've got to actually apply a thought process to it. And you see it as, that's why we can, that's why people can also read fast. It's, when you do speed reading, it's, you catch certain keywords in each sentence. So you catch, I know there's people who can read insanely fast. I think they go up to 3 words per sentence. And then I used to do it way back in the day, is you funnel the words down on the page. So you're creating a funnel, something like that on the page. And you start the first four words in the first line, then 4 4 3 3 3 2 2 1. And if you're reading a academic book, or just a basic storybook, if you want to call it basic storybook, then your brain kind of fills in the rest of the story. So even though you haven't read essentially 70 to 80% of the page, you can still essentially tell the person what has happened there. What your brain also does, your eyes and your brain also does, is that when you're doing that, you're reading, but every now and then your brain picks up something. Say you're in the middle of the page, where you're sort of in the middle of the funnel, and there is now something critically happening there, or there's a piece of important information there. So at that point, your brain is running. It's busy picking up speed already. So that, when you get to that point, the brain actually sort of slows down. You yourself actually sort of slows down, and you start paying attention to that little part. Okay, got that on. Then you continue again. Now, there's people who read books like that. It's and they can recall exactly what was written there.
Is it possible to train your brain to eventually be able to do that? And how would you
Oh yeah,
do that
oh
type of
yeah.
training?
To be able to read fast and
Yeah,
recall.
faster and
Oh,
faster
you
and
see, the
faster.
thing is, if you this okay, I went to school in the 70s, okay, and there was a lot of emphasis on learning and learning and learning. All the teachers and whoever was involved in schooling, I was in hostel as well. They sort of, they gave you all these, you want to call it tricks, of how to learn. The problem is, nobody actually taught you how to recall that information. And if they spend half the time teaching you how to learn and the other half teaching you how to recall, that would actually help you a hell of a lot. Um, and I feel that really hasn't really been done. To, the ability to train your brain is, you've got to do 2 things. You want to create critical thinking from a critical thinking brain, essentially. You do that through physically writing, not typing on a computer or on your phone. You've actually got to put pen to paper, and that's what you did at school. You wrote essays, not because the teacher wanted to, hey, I want to spend some time and, hey, tell us a story kind of thing. It is to teach you to develop critical thinking skills, that putting pen to paper. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They we've moved away from the point of physically writing things down to actually going on computers and phones and tablets and all those type of things. Sure, you're writing things. Sure, you're getting things out of your mind, if you want to call it that, and you're writing them or you're typing them down. But the critical thinking phase of that process is better. I'm not saying it doesn't develop if you type, for instance. It does, but to a lesser degree. The physical writing part is the actual part that creates that critical thinking scheme. The brain training part of it is, oh my God, there is so many things out there that you can. I mean, you can just jump on the internet and just have a look at brain training exercises. There is so many of those things out there. But again, some of them are aimed at specific things. When you train your brain, you've got to train. People think you do brain training, and it's an all-encompassing thing. You do maybe one or two different things, and now I've trained my brain. But no, you haven't actually. You you made your brain work a little bit more, but you didn't actually train. You haven't actually trained it.
Yeah.
You should the thinking part, the writing part, the problem solving part is what's important. Um, we live in a society where everything stress is built up through everything that you do, and we don't get we well you get rid of that stress through exercise and all that. Other people have more creative ways of getting rid of their stress. But writing is a method of doing that. Um, you know, it's it's that process of you feel like you're boiling up. You've got something to say. You want to say something, but you're either too afraid to speak to a person or a group of people, or you think, hey, this might come across a little bit too strong. I might offend people, or I don't want to create tension in the house or wherever. Um, the moment you take that problem and you write it down, you actually express it on pen and paper, you will actually find that you feel better. The thing is, if you take a book, you take the one page of the book and you write your problem, your issue down, and you explain it, and you bitch about it, and you get it out. On the other page, you write the solution. How am I going to fix this thing? Then you're starting with the problem solving part, because we've done a lot in our lives, but problem solving is not one of those things that we do well. Problem solving is we're stressed, we start drinking, we start fighting, we start doing all those other things. We don't actually solve the problem. We sort of run around it. We sort of pussyfoot around what is actually going on. Um, but the brain training part is that's a fascinating field. Um, well, I'm busy doing something like that as well. And for me, I believe that you've got to use, like I said, you've got to use various different factors. You've got to use a number sequence, and you've got to use a word sequence, because those two essentially use this different parts of the brain. And if you've got a number of sequence that you just random numbers that you maybe write down or something, and you recall them through a day or two or three, or for the week, for instance, or a couple of letters. If you want to go further, you connect the letters to the Big Five personality aspect ratio. You come up with X amount of words, five words, for instance, and you recall the numbers and the words, or even you start with the letters even before you start with words. Just letters relating to the Big Five. Once you've got that, then the idea is to actually sit with that and to write it out, get as many as you possibly can, and then do a factor analysis on them. So group them together, so that you essentially you keep on abstracting till you've essentially got one word left. And the thing about this is, at the end of during the exercise, you're not going to know what your prime word is at the end. That is going to come through the factor analysis, and that's going to essentially pop out one word for you. And the idea is, if you really want to use your brain and start thinking critically, you do that exercise. You factor analysis, you abstract until you've got one word left. That one word is now your prime. You take that word and you write a one-page essay about it. Doesn't matter what the word is. Now you've got to, it needs to be one page, and well, if you want to write a bit more than one page, page and a half or something is good. But you sort of want to restrict it to one page. The thing is, you want to be free thinking, but you also want to restrict yourself. You want to keep yourself in that one page ratio and put as much information about that specific word in there. You can do that on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, however often you want to. The other things is also stillness is a really good, you know. meditation has been around for thousands of years, and something that's been around for thousands of years is something we should maybe kind of look at. Maybe there's some truth in there. Maybe there's something we can utilize in there. You don't have to go, again, you don't have to go esoteric about it, but stillness. There's one thing that we used to, that's called green leaf meditation. It's a very simple principle, actually. You take a cup, you sit down nice and relaxed, straight back. You take a cup, fill it with water, and put a leaf inside it. And let a leaf float on top of the water. And your focus is that leaf. You only focus on that leaf. And you do start with, depending on what time of the day it is, obviously, whether you want to energize yourself, whether you want to just relax, you apply that, I call it, style of autogenic breathing that will assist you now with that. Then you're meditating. You're calming yourself down. You're lifting yourself up. You're falling asleep better. There's a specific breathing exercise you do when you go to bed at night. When we normally go, you count the breaths from 1 to 20. When you get to 12, 15, you're normally asleep by then. And it helps a hell of a lot. It really does. Um, yeah, but brain training is so much out there regarding brain training. So much. Yeah.
So later on, we will bring in a little bit more about the brain training and specific things that they can go and search and read up on if
Yeah.
they're really interested in something like that.
Yeah. No, I think that a person must definitely go have a look at what we can find, um, that is productive, if you want to call it that, as opposed to esoteric. Um, Number and letter sequences is something we'll introduce as well, a little bit later on, because that's an extensive brain training exercise. But I think as a person gets into those fields, if you want to call it that, you're looking at different personalities, like we said, and with when we were talking about it the other day, when it comes to the hiring process, for instance, you know, um, you hire somebody, you're a company, and you're hiring people in for a job. So what you tend to do is you tend to look at their qualifications, and those people who's got relevant qualifications gets one side, and obviously those who don't get put one other. Some people do have the middle run where they go, okay, this person, there's potential here. There's something they notice that's potential there. But again, it's potential in something that they've done. It's a reflection on the CV. I've done this course, or I've done something similar. That is a reflection of it. What you do is you should have a look when you get there, and you get there for your interview. This is not for the employers, essentially. It's always nice to give the person a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something. Have them sit and nice and relaxed. That immediately puts the person at ease. So both people are at ease when there's something to drink or something to eat. You're obviously not going to do it in a interrogation where you give people something to eat sometimes, but definitely not in an interview. But a cup of coffee is a good idea to get things nice and relaxed. Yeah, this is the thing. What you tend to do is, you've sifted through the CVs, you've put all those CVs aside that you think would be relevant to whatever you are doing, or whatever that person needs to be doing. If you wanted to take it a little bit further, you would add a questionnaire to that. A simple one-page questionnaire. You need one, or 2 pages. Simple. Is you get a very quick assessment of IQ, and you get a very quick personality assessment. The IQ EQ principle is something we'll talk about later as well. Um, you can test for both. Um, you can test for both EQ and IQ, depending on the job, what the person is, obviously their function is going to be. But the personality factor is, I think, becomes very important, because I might be qualified for a job, or for this specific function, but I don't have the personality type for it. I'm fascinated with finances, but I don't have the personality type to sit there behind the desk the whole day. I've got the personality type where I want to be out and doing things the whole day. But that fascinates me. The moment you do that personality assessment and you rate them according to the big five personality aspect ratio, you'll be able to better place the person. Because you've got an idea that this person is an extrovert that you're putting in an introvert's position. Rather take the extrovert and put them in a sales position or in a customer service position. Give them a proper training, as we've noted. There is a short, acute lack of that. Give them the proper training, and you know you're not only helping that person grow into that position. That's if you let them know what you're doing. But some people don't let them know. Some people don't let people know that this is the criteria that we are using. There used to be, I think, in the US, Europe, and the UK, at a stage, there used to be a case where an IQ assessment, not an IQ test, an IQ assessment was placed in a job application. And when it came out, people were apparently very upset about it. So there is those type of things. You know, it's a little Johnny Little Mary principle. Oh, Mary's got a 140. Oh, Johnny doesn't want to be left behind. He's got a 110, but he doesn't want to be left behind. So we developed an EQ system where everybody's level, everybody's not on the same scale, but there is a scale where you can take. There's an equal scale. Let's put it that way. Everybody's very close to each other, but what you can do is you can improve on that assessment. So once you've made an assessment on somebody, you can give them tools that they can now improve their emotional intelligence, if you want to call it that. You can't do that with IQ. You've got it or you don't. It's unfortunately as simple as that. If you've got an IQ of 140, to get that IQ higher is going to take insane investment, a hell of a lot of time, and you're probably going to gain 1 point if you're lucky. So that is definitely not going to help. But in the same breath, people are. I think part of the IQ thing comes down to the fact that people with a higher IQ tend to sort of brag almost about it, and the lower IQ people just don't talk about it, and you tend to look at these braggarts and you go, that's not quite right. You sort of feel left behind. Yeah, you essentially sit with an issue where you want to increase the brain power, you want to increase the emotional intelligence, you want to increase the awareness. Let's put it that way, as opposed to IQ. IQ is like I said, it's a very controversial thing. If you've got a high IQ, well done. If you haven't, you know what? It's not the end of the world. There is people with an IQ below 100 that is successful in business. It's just because you've got a lower IQ does not mean that you're an idiot. But like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot achieve. You still can achieve. The only thing that IQ essentially helps a lot with is problem solving. The person with a higher IQ has got a better ability to problem solve and to assess things and to make fast and accurate assessments and problem solving. Helps them with their problem solving. Yeah.
So that essentially brings us back to brain training, but also distinguishing between, you cannot train your brain for a higher IQ.
No.
So even though it helps with problem solving by studying and trying to better your problem solving skills, is not necessarily going to.
You know what you will do is you won't increase your IQ, but what you will do is you will increase, because what you're doing is you're essentially teaching yourself to pay attention. So if you this is going to come out very wrong, not very wrong, but yeah. Okay. What you're teaching yourself is assertiveness. So, and to pay attention. If you start teaching yourself assertiveness training and just to pay attention, we say that when you tell people, listen, you miss 70% of what happens in front of you 90% of the time during the day. People will argue with you, but you can very quickly just let somebody walk through a place without telling them to pay attention, for instance, and stop them and ask them what was in that room. And they'll probably get 2 or 3 things right. Our brains are so occupied with self, and what I want and what I want to do and me, that we don't actually pay attention to anything around us. When we want to do something, we need to stop the I and the me, and now you need to sit down and you go, okay, now I need to sit down and I need to physically pay attention to this right now, which is the wrong way of doing it. You should actually run on that scale all the time. Degrees of it, then you're functioning, then you function properly, as opposed to you've got fluctuations in mood the whole day, which is also a big problem. But brain training itself is numerical values, number values, repetitive things you do, paying attention. Is You can just start with simple things. Pay attention. Do that. I think most people have gotten that exercise of taking a tray, for instance, and putting 5 random elements, 5 different things on that tray. Throw a cloth over it, lift it up. You give the person a minute, 30 seconds, or whatever. Memorize that, boom, close, and start naming the things that's on the tray. I think lots of people are used to that. Is actually a very good exercise to do for brain training. If you take something like this table, for instance, and you just put 5 random things down there, cover it with a cloth. Sorry, cover it with a cloth. Bring the person in. You lift up. You give them 30 seconds or a minute or whatever you want to. Cover it up again, and then they recall what is there. It is a really, 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 really good exercise.
Up next on the CTL, our podcast.
Consequentialism and moral reasoning. You get in the water, to put it that way. You keep your lens later on.
Join us every Monday at 7 p.m. for the week's discussion.